This episode of One Hit Thunder is brought to you by DistroKid.
Movie night with the girls is a blast no matter what, but sometimes we like to level up our experience and make it more memorable.
Streaming at home is routine, but going to the movies with my friends is an event.
Watching a film on the big screen with surround sound is so immersive and exciting.
And you can't beat those cushy reclining chairs.
And now that I joined the Regal Crown Club, I earn points every time I buy a ticket or concessions.
As soon as she told me Regal has a free loyalty rewards program, I joined too.
I can use my points for concession upgrades, movie tickets, and merch.
I like using my points to enter sweepstakes for exclusive prizes.
On Mondays, I get 25% off candy.
And Tuesdays are Regal Value Days, half off popcorn and tickets as low as $5.
Plus, Regal adds a free popcorn to my account every year for my birthday.
After my 6th visit, I got bonus points.
You've only gone 6 times. I've gone 10 times, and I got even more bonus points.
Wait, you went to the movies without me?
Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Fafalios. It's pretty rare that I do a podcast by myself, but I just thought, hey, we did 100 through 81 of the THUNDRED, and as you might be able to tell, I'm pretty excited about this just because I thought it was such a cool idea to, get together all this data from people that I know and from people that love music and listeners of our show and put it together. And then, I'm kind of revealing it to Matt as we go on the show. So I felt like there was a lot of us being like, this album's awesome, or one or the other of us explaining why it's so awesome. But I thought a lot of interesting fun facts and trivia were kind of left out. So I just kind of wanted to do a short episode by myself. I'm sitting here by myself with my cat Zeke on my lap. So Zeke and I are actually going to do this and just talk about a few things from these albums that maybe would come in handy as something to tell a friend if this album was on or at music trivia or something. I like this kind of stuff. I hope you like this kind of stuff too. So it's not going to be a real long episode, but I thought it would be fun. So starting at number 100, we had the Cranberries. Everybody else is doing it, so why can't we? A couple of things I thought were interesting that we didn't mention. One, the song Dreams was on the You've Got Mail soundtrack, as well as on My So-Called Life. And I have, in recent years, rewatched My So-Called Life. That show is pretty good. I wish there would have been more seasons of it because I think there was maybe supposed to be and it got canceled. That was a really good show. And yes, I do remember Dreams being on that show. Also, the lyrics of Linger, I didn't know this until I looked it up. By the way, this is all stuff that I looked up on the internet. So, take it with a grain of salt. But I think for the most part, the stuff I'm saying is true. I hope it is. But the lyrics of Linger were written by Dolores about her first serious kiss of her life. Thought that was pretty cool. Also, the title of the album, Everybody Else Is Doing It, So Why Can't We, was about the band's early struggles to be taken seriously by industry insiders. They named the album that as a defiant response to their doubters. I think it's pretty cool to have like a middle finger type of an album title, especially for, the way that the Cranberries sound, you might not expect that. At number 99, we had Outkast, Speakerboxxx / The Love Below. I can't believe we didn't remember to say this in the episode, but this album won Album of the Year at the Grammys. It was the second hip-hop album ever to win that, the first being an album that might come up later on our list. I mean, you could look at what it is now and probably figure out, but maybe you just want to wait. I would wait if I were you. Hey Ya hit number 1 on the charts and stayed there for 9 weeks. And this is cool. The song that finally knocked it out was The Way You Move. This was a rare feat for songs from the same album to knock each other out of the top spot. I'm sure that that's happened a lot more now, just with the way that the charts have changed. I'm sure Taylor Swift is knocking her own song out of the top of the charts. But at the time, that was a rare feat. This album went diamond, which means it sold over 10 million copies in the U.S. alone, making it one of the best-selling hip-hop albums of all time. And, Matt talked about this, but we didn't get into it too much. Andre 3000 and Big Boy recorded their parts of the album separately in different studios and cities with little communication during the recording process. That is pretty weird. That's not very collaborative, but hey, it worked out for them. They sold 10 million copies, so I would say that was a success. At number 98, we had Ween, Chocolate and Cheese. One thing I can't believe I forgot to mention, because I remember seeing this in the layout as a teenager who loved Ween, is that the album is dedicated to John Candy, who had died in 1994. Ween were big John Candy fans, as am I. I think as I get older, I realize John Candy was incredible. I just recently watched Uncle Buck. John Candy ruled. This was Ween's first album with a bigger budget. I don't have this in front of me, but I think I remember that Ween took the budget and built their own studio in some sort of hollowed out warehouse or something, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, before this, they were releasing stuff they were recording at home on 4 tracks and 8 tracks as their entire albums. So, I mean, go back and listen to the difference between Pure Guava and Chocolate and Cheese. It's a crazy difference. I didn't know this, but the band Fish covered the song Roses Are Free from Chocolate and Cheese. And this introduced a whole legion of Fish fans to Ween. And also, one more thing that I can't believe I forgot to mention, because I remember being so excited about this. I may have seen this movie in the movie theaters, or I don't know. Maybe I did. I loved Tom Green, so I might have. But the movie Road Trip, the 2000 comedy starring Tom Green and Breckin Meyer and Sean William Scott and DJ Qualls and Amy Smart, Voodoo Lady is in that movie. So I was pretty excited that a Ween song was in a movie I was seeing. At number 97, we had Piebald's We Are the Only Friends That We Have. If you haven't heard the episode of Krista Makes a Podcast with Travis from Piebald talking about writing American Hearts, you should go listen to that because it's a really, really good episode. There's just tons of trivia you can find out just from listening to that. But one thing I will say is that they recorded this album with Paul Coldery, who, if you don't know who Paul Coldery is, it's the guy who produced a bunch of Mighty Mighty Bosstones albums, but especially that Let's Face It album that had The Impression That I Get on it. He also produced Radiohead's Pablo Honey and Hole's Live Through This. And one thing about Paul Coldery that I remember is that when you think about Creep from Radiohead or The Impression That I Get from Mighty Mighty Bosstones, they have these big moments that lead into the chorus. Think about The Impression That I Get. It's that big Dickie Barrett scream. Or in Creep, it's that cha-chunk, cha-chunk before it kicks in. He always does this thing in his productions, like the hits. Well, on American Hearts, I mean, I guess the song was already a song before then, but it is a pretty big thing that Travis yells, "Hey," and then that chorus hits really hard. You're part of it. I don't know. Take what you will from that. But once again, go listen to that episode of Krista Makes a Podcast because it's really good. At number 96, we had Insomniac. I mentioned that the song 86 was maybe my favorite song on this album. That song was about being rejected by the Bay Area punk scene after they signed to a major label, which I thought was pretty interesting. The album is called Insomniac because Billy Joe was struggling with insomnia during the writing and recording process of the album. And the one other thing I didn't know is that the cover art for this album is by a collage artist named Winston Smith. The name of that piece that's the cover of this album is God Told Me to Skin You Alive. And it's this real chaotic, surreal piece of art with hidden messages and references to themes of consumption and modern life. And then even that God Told Me to Skin You Alive, I found out that is a lyric from a song called I Kill Children by the Dead Kennedys. I didn't know that. That is from their album Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. At number 95, we had The Streets with original pirate material. And we talked about this a little bit, but Mike Skinner, who is basically The Streets, not only did he write and perform all the songs on that album, but he also handled most of the production and sound design himself. He worked on most of this album in his bedroom in Brixton, and he created the gritty sound that The Streets were known for. He was self-taught in production, and he famously used a budget personal computer with Cubase software to create the beats and the samples. And then his approach to creating this album influenced a whole generation of musicians who saw the potential of creating music at home. A lot of us create music at home now, but at the time, wasn't quite as easy as it is now. The title of the album, Original Pirate Material, refers to the underground radio stations that broadcasted garage, jungle, and grime music in the UK. And the single Has It Come to This, which is one of my favorite songs on the album, that is considered a UK garage classic, and it's become an anthem for British youth. Okay, at number 94, we had Jellyfish, Spilt Milk. Once again, there is a Chris Makes a Podcast episode with Roger Joseph Manning Jr. from Jellyfish. It's really good. You'll learn a lot. I love that episode too. So go check that out if you haven't. It's about the song New Mistake, which is from Spilt Milk. Jellyfish released the song The Ghost at number 1 as one of the singles from this album. I don't know if it was the first one, but regardless, it was an interesting choice because it's kind of talking shit on the music industry, kind of a bold move if you want to have success in the music industry, to have a song that is saying something against it. Great song, though. In case you didn't know this, Jellyfish's lead singer, Andy Sturmer, is also their drummer, and he played drums standing up and singing live. I've never seen a band do that, so that's pretty cool. Also, the song Joining a Fan Club from this album was covered by the Japanese pop rock duo Puffy Amayumi, and it appeared in their TV series too, which was called Hi Hi Puffy Amayumi. In fact, most of Puffy Amayumi's work was produced or co-written by Andy Sturmer of Jellyfish. Pretty wild. At number 93, we had Phoebe Bridgers' Stranger in the Alps. This is pretty funny. Matt referenced this in the episode, and I had no idea what he was talking about. I like the movie The Big Lebowski. I'm not like a person who's seen it 100 times or something, but I actually just recently watched it again. But the album title Stranger in the Alps is a Big Lebowski reference because on the edited for TV version of the movie, when John Goodman's character is yelling, "Do you see what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass?" They changed it to, "Do you see what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps?" That's really funny that she made her album title Stranger in the Alps. Some other things about this album. She collaborated with Connor Oberst of Bright Eyes on the song Would You Rather, which then led to those two forming a band called Better Oblivion Community Center. They're great. Check them out. John Mayer was one of the first big artists to publicly praise Phoebe Bridgers, and he tweeted about how much he loved this album, which exposed her to a wider audience. And the song Funeral on this album was inspired by Phoebe's real-life experience of singing at the funeral of a young person who had died. At number 92, man, I wish this album would have been higher. We had Bon Iver's 22 A Million. For anyone who isn't familiar with this extremely experimental album, you should check it out. Justin Vernon and his team used a modified sampler called the Messina, which allowed vocals to be transformed live. This device was named after engineer Chris Messina, who helped Justin craft new, otherworldly vocal effects. That's definitely true. I've never heard anything that sounds like this album. The closest thing that I can think of that sounds like this album a little bit would be like some Imogen Heap stuff, I think, if you like Imogen Heap. The number 22 appears throughout this album because Justin considers that his lucky number. That's his 37, I guess. Every song on the album is this like weird puzzle combination of numbers and symbols as far as like the song title, like random punctuation. And this stylistic choice was partly inspired by Justin's fascination with the internet and meme culture. And it also added like a sort of mysterious sort of vibe to the album. I will say it is pretty annoying when you're trying to tell someone to check out a song, though. The album was recorded in a bunch of unconventional places, one being a remodeled veterinary clinic known as April Base in Wisconsin. Justin created this place to be a versatile studio space, and he encouraged a free and experimental atmosphere for artists there, which he definitely took advantage of. and the song 715 Creeks. Once again, I guess that's what it's called. It's all kind of like weird, like Greek characters and stuff. I call it 715 Creeks. It's only Justin's digitally manipulated voice without any instrumental backing. The song is incredible. You should check it out. At number 91, we had Eels, Electro-Shock Blues, which is pretty funny that I told Matt to check this out in preparation, but it was actually number 2 on his list. I had never heard this album before, but this album was recorded in the wake of 2 personal family tragedies for E, who's the main guy from Eels. He lost his sister to suicide and then his mother to cancer shortly afterward. So this album is a reflection on his grief with themes of death, mental illness, and survival. But don't let that like sort of subject matter sway you from listening to this, because it is an incredible album. The title of this album, Electro-Shock Blues, comes from E's sister's journals, where she described her experiences with electroconvulsive therapy. The song Climbing to the Moon on the album is believed to be a subtle tribute to Kurt Cobain, with whom E shared a similar struggle against depression and alienation. This album at the time was considered a risky release for DreamWorks, which is the label it came out on, due to its dark themes and unconventional style, but it's now recognized as one of the band's most important works, and the cover art for this album was drawn by E himself. Hey, I'm going to take a real quick break here for a few words from our sponsors, but after that, I'll be back with some fun facts about albums 90 through 81. Hey there, One Hit Thunder listeners. Are you ready to take your music to the next level? Well, get ready to rock, because this episode is brought to you by DistroKid, the ultimate digital music distribution service for artists like you. With DistroKid, you can easily upload your songs or albums to online stores and streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube Music, reaching fans all around the globe. But that's just the beginning. DistroKid offers a ton of awesome features like Hyperfollow, which helps you promote your releases and get pre-saves on your songs, all for free. But wait, there's more. The DistroKid app is now available on iOS and Android. With the app, you can manage your releases, track your streaming stats, and even withdraw your earnings, all from the palm of your hand. And for those looking to perfect their sound, check out Mixia. This powerful tool allows you to put the finishing touches on your tracks in minutes, ensuring they sound polished and professional every time. But that's not all. DistroKid has just launched a brand new feature called Instant Share, allowing you to easily share large files securely with collaborators, producers, and more. With Instant Share, you can keep your music streaming at the highest quality while making the best impression possible. So what are you waiting for? Elevate your music career today with DistroKid and unlock a world of possibilities. Possibilities that I know all about because I've been using DistroKid for years. It's seriously great. If you haven't used it before, you're going to love it. And One Hit Thunder listeners get an exclusive offer, 30% off your first year with DistroKid by signing up at distrokid.com/VIP/OneHitThunder. That's distrokid.com/VIP/OneHitThunder.
With Amex Platinum, you can really be in the now. Access to Resi Priority Notify. Yes. 4 p.m. checkout with fine hotels and resorts booked through Amex Travel.
We needed this.
And dedicated card member entrances at select events.
Let's go!
Means you can focus on the present moment. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
With Uber Reserve, good things come to those who plan ahead. Family vacay? Reserve your ride as soon as you book your flights. To all the planners, now you can reserve your Uber ride up to 90 days in advance. See Uber app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
Gift the remarkable with Marc Jacobs fragrances this holiday season. From the iconic Daisy and Perfect to the all-new Daisy Wild, Marc Jacobs perfume gift sets include everything she needs to feel special. From her favorite fragrance, plus the matching travel spray. Holiday gifts don't get much more perfect than this. So if you're looking for a gift inspiration these holidays, gift the remarkable with Marc Jacobs.
All right, I'm back, everybody. At number 90 on our list, and I was really impressed that this album was as high as number 90. I would have never guessed in a million years that the Weakerthans would have made the list. Not because they don't deserve to. I don't know. I'm actually impressed because I love the Weakerthans. At number 90, we had their album Left and Leaving. This album is considered a concept album about the feelings of isolation and dislocation felt by John K. Samson. I mentioned this in the episode. If you didn't know, John K. Samson was originally in the band Propagandhi, or, I mean, a lot of people call the band Propagandhi. I call them Propagandhi. But we were like a fast political punk band who got like more metal over the years. At the time, they were like a pretty snotty punk band. But it was wild to see him leave Propagandhi and do the Weakerthans because these two bands could not be any more different. Even though there are a few songs that Propagandhi played first, ones that John wrote, that then became Weakerthans songs. I think there's a couple on Less Talk, More Rock. This album, Left and Leaving, is deeply rooted in the band's hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba, and many of the songs reference local landmarks, weather, and experiences unique to life in Canada. And the song Aside was featured in the closing credits of the movie Wedding Crashers. That was one of those things where when I saw that movie the first time, I'm like, whoa, the Weakerthans? That's so cool. Also, recently, my buds in Bayside released a cover of that song, Aside. That's a great song. At number 89, we had Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks, which, you know, I'm not a big Dylan guy, and maybe I just need to dig in. You know, it's just one of the, I can't know everything when it comes to music, but I do know that people love this album. This album is often seen as a reflection of Bob Dylan's emotional turmoil during his separation from his wife. Now, there are two versions of this album. After he recorded the initial tracks in New York, Bob felt dissatisfied with the sound, and then he opted to re-record 5 of the songs in Minneapolis with a more stripped-down approach. This led to 2 versions of the album, the original New York sessions, and then later the Minnesota sessions, which ultimately became the official release. This album also is really a departure from Bob's earlier work because the lyrics exhibit a vulnerability that was rarely seen in his previous albums, which used to be pretty abstract or more political. At number 88, I'm really excited this one was on here too. We had Boyz II Men II. This album debuted at number 1 and stayed there for 5 consecutive weeks, making this one of the best-selling R&B albums of all time. The song I'll Make Love to You spent 14 weeks at number 1, making it one of the longest running number 1 hits in history at the time anyway. I think it's been broken since. And the hit On Bended Knee from this album was co-written by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who were very instrumental to the sound of 90s R&B and pop music. We talked about Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis on the show before, but in case you need a refresher, what songs are these guys responsible for? Janet Jackson alone, these guys are responsible for Miss You Much, Together Again, Doesn't Really Matter, All For You, That's the Way Love Goes, Love Will Never Do Without You, and When I Think of You. And they also, this is wild, they did Human League, Human, George Michael's Monkey, and Usher's You Remind Me. So these guys were pretty dang accomplished. At number 87, we had Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. I couldn't believe that this was as low as it was. If you would have gave me a guess as to where this would have been, I would have thought maybe it'd be in the top 20. But hey, our list is surprising. Just like that Boyz II Men II album that I just talked about, This album debuted at number 1 and stayed there for 5 weeks. It has since sold over 30 million copies worldwide. Everybody probably already knows this, but in case you don't, the song Born in the USA is often misinterpreted as like this patriotic anthem, but it's actually a critique of the treatment of Vietnam War veterans and the struggles faced by working class Americans. This album has 7 top 10 singles on it, and also another probably commonly known thing, but the music video for Dancing in the Dark is famous for featuring Courtney Cox, who is pulled from the audience to dance with Bruce, and this moment really helped launch her career. That's pretty cool. At number 86, we had Queen's A Night at the Opera. The title of this album, never knew this, came from a Marx Brother film of the same name from 1935. Freddie Mercury was a big fan of the Marx Brothers. The promo video for Bohemian Rhapsody is often credited as being like the first big music video, as like kind of making the music video an art form. Of course, everybody knows this video with the black background and all their faces. Very, very iconic. And obviously everyone knows probably way too much about Bohemian Rhapsody at this point, especially if you've seen the movie. But it's pretty wild that song was 6 minutes long, way too long for radio, but reached number 1 on the UK charts and stayed there for 9 weeks. A 6-minute song was the number 1 song on the charts for 9 weeks in the UK. That's pretty cool. At number 85, we had Huey Lewis and the News Sports. This was Huey Lewis and the News' 3rd album, and it did reach number 1 on the Billboard 200. This album had a bunch of hits. It had Heart and Soul, Heart of Rock and Roll, I Want a New Drug, If This Is It, which is my favorite Huey Lewis song, and Walking on a Thin Line. All 5 of those songs reached the top 20, and I Want a New Drug went the highest. It went to number 6. Speaking of I Want a New Drug, you may know this already, but that song was involved in a high-profile legal dispute because it's pretty obvious that Ray Parker Jr. completely ripped it off when he wrote Ghostbusters. Funny enough, we had Huey Lewis on Krista Makes a Podcast, and I think this may have come up. I don't know if this came up or if Chris and I just talked about it. But basically, at one point when they were making Ghostbusters, they had I Want a New Drug in there as like an example. They wanted to use that song, but then Huey Lewis didn't want to give them the rights to it. So they just basically said, we want a song like this. And Ray Parker Jr. just like made Ghostbusters. And if you put them back to back, go listen to it. It's very, very similar. At number 84, we had N.W.A.'s Straight Out of Compton. I think this is really cool. And I think this is a theme of a lot of albums on our list, The Streets being an example, and some of the other ones I'm about to talk about. This album was completely self-financed and self-produced by N.W.A. Very DIY. Because of the explicit content on this album, it received little to no airplay, but it didn't matter because of the underground popularity. The album eventually went triple platinum, demonstrating the power of word of mouth and DIY. Triple platinum with basically no radio play. That's pretty cool. Ice Cube was only 19 at the time, and he wrote most of the lyrics on the album. Express Yourself was kind of the outlier of the album. I like that song. I think Matt referred to it as being cheesy or something, but I actually like that song. It was the only song in the album without explicit lyrics, and it also had like a pretty positive message about resisting drugs and being yourself. And this album is one of the albums that helped popularize, which is pretty funny, it helped popularize the parental advisory sticker. Pretty cool. Speaking of pretty like DIY ethics and stuff, at number 83, we had another one that I was shocked was on the list, but I think it's cool is on the list. They Might Be Giants, Lincoln. Most of this album was recorded in John and John's apartments using a 4-track, which gives it that real unique DIY feel. This approach allowed them to experiment with unconventional sounds and maintain their indie lo-fi aesthetic. The song Anna Ang, the first track on the album, became an unexpected success on college radio. It's seriously one of my all-time favorite songs. And it was the band's first song to chart on the Billboard Modern Rock Tracks chart. Some of the songs on Lincoln originated from the They Might Be Giants Dial-A-Song service. If you don't know about this This was a thing that they had that allowed fans to call a phone line to hear demos and previews of songs, which is just a genius marketing tool that helped them build a dedicated fan base. That is so cool. This album didn't get huge mainstream success, but they did sell 100,000 copies of it at the time, which that was a big accomplishment for an album that was like recorded mostly on 4 tracks in their apartment. Pretty cool. That attracted the attention of major labels, and after this, they signed to Elektra. At number, what was it? 82. Yeah, that's where we're at, 82. We had TLC's Crazy, Sexy, Cool. This album was the first album by a female R&B group to be certified diamond. It sold over 10 million copies. It's now one of the best-selling albums of all time with more than 15 million copies sold worldwide. I never knew this. The album title represents each member's personality. Lisa Left Eye Lopez was crazy, Chili was sexy, and T-Boz was cool. They worked with some of the top producers of the time, and still today, really, on this album. That included Babyface, Dallas Austin, and Jermaine Dupri. Unfortunately, they also worked with a young Sean Puffy Combs, who co-produced If I Was Your Girlfriend, which is a Prince cover. I love that Prince song. Left Eye was actually against releasing Creep as a single because it promoted infidelity, and she felt that it sent a negative message. She even tried to wear black tape over her mouth in the music video, but eventually she was like, okay, I'll go along with it. Good thing she did, because it became one of their biggest hits, reaching number 1 on the Hot 100. Obviously, Waterfalls was probably the biggest hit from this album. It had a groundbreaking music video that had lots of effects that were considered state-of-the-art at the time. It cost nearly $1 million to make that music video, but it became one of the most iconic music videos of the 90s, and it won 4 Video Music Awards. Also, a lot of people probably know this, but despite the huge success of this album, TLC famously filed for bankruptcy in 1995, citing poor contract terms and significant debt. This case in specific brought attention to the exploitation of artists in the music industry and the importance of contract negotiations. And then finally, at number 81, we had REM's Automatic for the People. Never knew this. The album's title came from a slogan of Weaver D's, which was a soul food restaurant in Athens, Georgia, where REM is from. REM did not do a traditional tour to support this album, partly due to exhaustion and partly because of the introspective nature of the album. They opted instead to take a break, which was highly unusual when you release a new album, but didn't seem to matter. This album was so popular. The string arrangements on this album were done by Led Zeppelin bassist and keyboardist John Paul Jones. I never knew that. Think about what a big part the string parts play in songs like Everybody Hurts and Night Swimming. I thought that was pretty cool. This album went on to sell over 18 million copies worldwide. Hey, maybe you don't need to tour an album to sell tons of albums. And this album has been cited as a major influence by artists like Radiohead, Pearl Jam, and Coldplay. And that's it. That's the fun facts and trivia I have for you this week. Obviously, I'm really excited about putting this list out there and getting people's feedback on it. And I just love that it's together we created this list. Me and people I know and listeners of the show. And I just think it's really cool. And so far, I think it's the coolest top 100 list ever. So I hope you all have a great day, and I hope you learned a thing or two. And I hope if you don't know these albums, maybe you'll discover a new favorite album. So yeah, check these ones out.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bruce.
And I'm Nolan, and this is the Corner of Gray Street podcast. As longtime Dave Matthews Band fans, we set out to create a podcast to dive deep into the past, present, and future of DMB.
Not only do we recap and review shows within an ongoing tour, but we revisit past shows from throughout the band's history, conduct interviews with a wide variety of guests with ties to DMB, and create unique and exclusive content like our Concerts on the Corner series.
Whether you're a fan of the band or just a fan of great music, we think you'll find something you'll enjoy. We can't wait to see you on the corner of Gray Street.
Ready for a real relationship? Talkify is 6.5 times more efficient than dating apps. Why waste 40+ hours swiping each month? Let Talkify's expert matchmakers manage it. On average, clients find someone special in just 3 matches, compared to the 1,500 swipes for just 1 date on apps. With an over 80% success rate, confidential process with no public profiles, you can trust Talkify. Visit TAWKIFY.com to start your journey. Stop swiping, wishing, or waiting. Start your journey and go to TAWKIFY.com.